So, welcome back. I thought what we would do is just begin reading and we can comment as we go. So I'll start with, again, chapter 2, verse 1. He said to me, "Son of man, stand up on your feet and I will speak to you." And he spoke. As he spoke, the Spirit came into me and raised me to my feet, and I heard him speaking to me. He said, "Son of man, I'm sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me." And I want you to listen. I'm going to read it, you listen. "I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation that has rebelled against me. They and their fathers have been in revolt against me to this very day. The people who I am sending you to are obstinate and stubborn. Say to them, this is what the Sovereign Lord says, and whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are a rebellious house, they will know that a prophet has been among them. And you, son of man, don't be afraid of them or their words. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions. Do not be afraid of what they say, or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious house. You must speak my words to them, whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are rebellious. But you, son of man, listen to what I say to you. Do not rebel like the rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I give you." Then I looked, and I saw a hand stretched out to me. In it was a scroll which he unrolled before me. On both sides of it were written words of lament, mourning, and woe. Okay? So I'll stop there because that's all of chapter 2. How many times did you hear the word rebellious, rebels?
Yes.
It's constant, right? Like you would never miss that hearing it. Like there, it's designed that way. There's that drilling. There's that boring, right? Like it's probably one could count numerous times. Rebellious, 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 rebels. You know. Now I want to say this. This is how we have to start with God. Period. God is coming to us having already dealt with our forefathers, and He's preserved a few of them for a couple of reasons. But we are the next generation, functionally speaking. And this is what he says to us. So, we can argue and say, well, I'm not really like that in my heart. Or, it's kind of like being identified with a group, in our world, whether you agree with, I'm using this as an example, so I'm not making a political statement. But imagine what conjures up from the media that we get when we hear about the Iranians, right? Yeah, that they're this people that is, or in Soviet Russia, the Russians. You could use a number of examples. I don't want to be, maybe on the other side of the world, just to be fair, the Americans, or the Canadians, or the North Americans, you see? Now, you see the identification, right? But this goes beyond that. This goes beyond a characterization. This is what, if we are hearing this, and we are children of these people, spiritually speaking, this is the message that God has to us. We are a rebellious house. And that hurts. Because the immediate reaction inside of us is, well, I don't feel rebellious. I never thought I was rebellious. I thought I was a nice person. Well, okay, now you see, right off the bat, if that's what we're thinking, which is understandable, then we are starting high. Okay?
Right, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Remember, we're starting in a good position. We're the Pharisee. I'm not like this publican. Look at the posture. The Pharisee standing in the publican. See? We need to start low. So if God is saying to us, whether we had anything to do with it or not, let's pretend, the best thing to do is just take it and accept it.
But if you think about it in reality, we are a rebellious people.
Okay, fair enough. I guess what I'm... Yes, you're correct, Doug.
In truth.
In truth, we are. We have this prayer in one of the liturgies. We've done nothing good upon the earth, we say about ourselves. And we like to argue, and I challenge anybody, and it's happened to me when I was a younger man, where I really fought with that, like inside. I really wrestled with the idea, well, just a second, I didn't really do that or never thought that, but I'm actually doing myself a disservice if I argue with that. We may not know it, we may not perceive it, we may not agree with it, but the best thing to do is accept it. I was saying to Brenda, we were listening about Cyprus. Cyprus is going through an incredible financial issue right now. Now, they were talking about Cyprus going bankrupt or kicking the can further down the road. Some people believe, and I'm one of them, they should declare bankruptcy. Because all they're going to do is multiply exactly the problems that they've got themselves into in the first. They should just take the hit now so that you can grow up from that or somehow rise up from that. I mean, this is now somewhat of a, not necessarily a political statement, it's more of a financial commentary, but we are a rebellious house. We need to accept that deep in our gut, bowels. We need to accept that, and then God can talk to us, because you know how he says a broken and contrite heart God will not despise in the Psalms? That's not us being sorrowful. That's referring to the people that he has to debase, because he can't talk to us unless he gets us down first. Then he can do something with us. So we are rebellious, and you heard that. But not only that, and this is something that will become evident at the end of chapter 3, and I'm going to address it now. We, the people, are wicked and not merely evil, and there is a difference in Scripture. Because sometimes, particularly the RSV version, they'll put in wicked for evil, but that's incorrect. The wicked refer to the insiders. Evil are the nations, okay? But the wicked are the ones that have a trust and they betray it, or have how did I put it here? That they are insiders who have betrayed a trust. They're traitors, or in Galatians chapter 1 verse 6, and this translation actually got it pretty good. Galatians chapter 1 verse 6 says, I'm astonished that you are so quickly deserting the one who called you by the grace of Christ and are turning to a different gospel. Deserting is a military term. That's desertion. And Brenda and I were talking before we came, we said, you know, in the military, in combat, your life, your fellow soldiers depending on you and you're depending on them for your life. And you desert. You see, the idea is that that's what wickedness is. It's always referring to the insiders. These are the ones who are betraying a trust. That's wickedness. That's not evil. There's difference. And that's something that, again, will become evident at the end. I wanted to throw that out. But in verse 5, is again, so I'm going to be a little bit moving through here. Verse 5 says a very interesting verse, which really kind of is, it says, and whether they listen or fail to listen, for they are a rebellious house, they will know that a prophet has been among them. Now, isn't that an interesting verse? Because, I mean, it's almost puzzling. Anybody want to take a guess what that's all about? It's not easy, so if you don't get it, I mean, really, I didn't get it.
It's similar to when the wise men came to Herod, and he said, where is the child going to be born? And he said, Bethlehem of Judea. So what he said to the soldiers is, go find all the kids in that area and kill them.
Yes.
Get rid of this guy, you know.
Oh, okay, so, yeah.
So
okay,
even though he knew what the prophecy was, he was prepared to rebel against God and just ignore it completely.
And I have to give you a silver star, because that was a really good, that was a very good effort on your part.
I want a gold star.
You're
gonna,
but you know what, it's...
Wood star.
This reminds me, there you go. This reminds me of a story Father Tarazi told us, that when they used to score, when he was in, I think he was in medical school. Well, he was in medical school for a time, and then he switched to theology. What a switch! But anyway, the point is that they were being examined orally, and they had a real smart guy, and the rule was that the highest you could get was 18 out of 20. Because 19 20 was God, and 19 was the professor. And they had this real smart guy who was just plowing through everything, and they thought he would pull off a 19, but right at the end, he couldn't get it, and the professor said, "You see, 19 is for the professor." But anyway, so you get an 18 for that. But what is proposed by Father Tarazi is that that if you think about it, and this will be underscored as we read, that the matter at hand is, and it's already been said, is not the people's reaction. You know, whether they listen or fail to listen, that's not the issue. The matter at hand is that I'm sending you and you're telling them this. That's the matter at hand. And the perfect way to understand this is with our children. My brother, God bless him, he passed away a few years ago now, smoked. And struggled with on and off smoking all his life. But he told me when I was a young kid, and he was an older teenager, he said, "Don't smoke." That's what he said. But I mean, as an example, he was horrible because he smoked as a young man. But I never did. Now he's gone. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is he said it. He didn't live it, but he said it. And even if he was to move on or die in his case, he's given me something to go on. So when we teach our children, what I'm trying to say is that you need to tell them the truth and teach them properly, because there'll come a time where they'll be faced with issues where you're not there to hold their hand, and they may not agree with you, but because it's said, and later on when they become more mature, they may remember something which may save their life. See how you can save somebody's life? Because you said it. You didn't withhold it. Now, the kid may say that's crazy when you tell them. But when you're gone, when you're in our graves, and our children only have our words, our teachings, that may save their life. So we shouldn't withhold proper teaching. But the point is that that's the matter at hand. You don't worry about what they say. You say it so that even if they reject it, then maybe later on it'll save them. And that's okay. So these are some things to think about. The matter at hand, it has to be said whether it's heard or not. Let's, my next notes, go on to chapter 3. And he said to me, "Son of man, eat what is before you, eat this scroll, then go and speak to the house of Israel." So I opened my mouth, and he gave me the scroll to eat. He said to me, "Son of man, eat this scroll I am giving to you, and fill your stomach with it." So I ate it and tasted it, and it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. How many times did I say the word eat? 4. You noticed? Interesting.
I said about, I wasn't sure.
You said about 4. That's pretty close, a little closer to gold than heard.
No.
That's pretty good.
A woman should not be above her, no.
That's right, she gets wet.
So yeah, I mean, again, the hearing, even in English, is indicative of something. What does that remind you of when we say eat the scroll? Does this sound familiar to you from anywhere in the Bible? The idea of eating the word, feeding on the word. That's Deuteronomy. That's Matthew. Deuteronomy, what is it? 8:3. That Jesus quotes. Just as a reminder for us, Deuteronomy 8:3 says, and you'll know this verse, it's very, "He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord."
That's what you said.
He quoted that in Matthew.
And he's being tempted in the
That's right, and he quotes it. That's exactly where he quotes it. And also, let's look at Amos 8:11 to 13. This is another 8:11 to 13. And "The days are coming, declares the sovereign Lord, when I will send a famine through the land, not a famine for food or a thirst for water, but a famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Men will stagger from sea to sea and wander from north to east, searching for the word of the Lord, but they will not find it. In that day, the lovely young women and strong young men will faint because of thirst. So the idea is that the true, and this is John 6, by the way, the true bread from heaven is his teaching. And that's, as a side comment, I believe this is, my wish is, not because of me, that there'd be many more hungry people for the word of the Lord. And it's actually less and less, but that if you go to Egypt, in Scripture, if you go to Egypt to satisfy your hunger, bad news. So, in other words, bless the Lord that we're here feeding on his word. This is the true food. This is the true food. He said to verse 4, he said to me, Son of man, go now to the house of Israel and speak my words to them. You are not being sent to a people of obscure speech and difficult language, but to the house of Israel. Not to many peoples of obscure speech and difficult language, whose words you cannot understand. Surely if I had sent you to them, they would have listened to you. Can you imagine? How belittling. But the house of Israel is not willing to listen to you because they are not willing to listen to me. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. That's Samuel when they were asking for a king.
Yes, that's right.
For the whole house of Israel is hardened and obstinate. But, funny they compare it to Pharaoh. But I will make you as unyielding and hardened as they are. I will make your forehead like the hardest stone, harder than flint. Do not be afraid of them or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious house. This word hard in Hebrew is hezak, which is the root of the word Ezekiel.
Oh.
Hard, strong, but actually the word Ezekiel means God is going to prove to be the strong one, and we'll see that a little bit later.
Like Hezekiah too.
So you see that Ezekiel is kind of being set up to be hard against them, but God is going to be hard on Ezekiel. But through his name. Do not be afraid of them or terrified by them, though they are a rebellious house. And he said to me, Son of man, listen carefully and take to heart all the words I speak to you. Go now to your countrymen in exile and speak to them. Say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, whether they listen or fail to listen. This idea of take to heart, first of all, let me just say that in verse 8, he says, but the house of Israel is not willing to listen to you because they are not willing to listen to me. Now, can you imagine? God already has, you have enough information that if you were Ezekiel, you know right away you're in trouble because he's talking about, going up to a rebellious house and speaking his words. You know that you're in a terrifying position. Now you're told that they won't listen to you, guaranteed.
So,
you don't even have a hope that maybe they'll listen.
you set me
Like
up.
the Ninevites, right?
Yeah, like he's being set up.
Yeah, now I'm asking you to go to a rebellious people. Now you might just, before he says anything else, you might think, well, maybe they'll listen. And right after that, he says, and they won't listen to you, by the way.
So why are you sending me?
And that's exactly what I have in my notes. Ezekiel could very well say, what's the point? But he's not allowed to do that.
Right.
He's
an obedient servant.
To be hard. His name says it all. I'm going to take you by force, and you are going to butt up against them. Harsh. And you've heard Ezekiel's mission is to open his mouth only by the command of God and regurgitate the words on the scroll as written. He's to take it to heart with resolve and go to his people, which he is one of them. And I wanted to read something about resolve. I thought I would do this little excursus here. As anybody, I would imagine, in the Orthodox tradition we hear a lot about this, but has anybody heard of saints called fools for Christ?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, when you see in Moscow, when they show Red Square in Moscow, they show that big church. Yeah. That St. Basil Fool for Christ, that's a very famous, it's not the usual Basil from the 3rd century. But these fools for Christ, there's this one named Simeon of Edessa. And I just wanted to say something. It says, I'll just read you a couple things here. It says, in the life of the church, there's a historical example which represents the most extreme and extraordinary way of obeying the gospel, preaching about overturning and rejecting individual morality. This is the example of holy fools. In their lives, in the lives and behavior of these saints, the church has seen the expression of a particular gift of the Holy Spirit, one of the most acute forms of prophetic preaching. The fools are usually monks who come down into the world, into the cities and into Christian society, and perform strange and sensuous actions, and the actions of madmen. Yet these actions always have deeper meaning. They always aim to uncover the reality and truth hidden behind the practices of this world. The fool goes into taverns and brothels and keeps bad company. He lives on the streets like a vagabond with disreputable people, like prostitutes and street urchins. He appears to fall into their way of life, whereas in fact he is revealing to them the truth of salvation in a way accessible to them and on their own spiritual level through extraordinary antics, jokes, and absurdities. Has anybody ever heard anything like this? This is what's in our tradition. The reason I'm telling you this is because, I'll get to a point, you may wonder why I'm doing this. Simeon of Edessa, he was an anchorite. It's a certain type of monk in the wilderness beyond the Jordan when he received the call from God to live as a fool. He said to his companion in the ascetic life, in the power of Christ, I'm going to mock the world. And that's after being in seclusion for 30 years. Then he went down into the city of Emesa and performed miracles, but for God's sake, he pretended to be a fool. And by the way, he walked into a city pulling a dead dog. On one occasion, on a Sunday, he took some walnuts and went into the church at the beginning of the liturgy, cracking walnuts and putting out the lamps. When they threw themselves upon him to drive him out, he went up into the pulpit, and from there he pelted the women with walnuts.